Hello and welcome to another episode of the Three Techs. I'm your host, Tony Tang, and with me tonight are my co-hosts, Bob Fairbairn. Hey, Bob.
Hey, good evening, Tony.
And Stephen Bramson. Hey, Stephen.
Hi there.
So tonight, I'd like to take a look at a better way of producing our show. In the past, we've shown a lot of different tools that we've had to string together, but tonight, we have a television studio in a single tool. So this tool is called mimoLive, and it's made by Boink Software here. And on this webpage, you can see that mimoLive allows you to do live streams, but we aren't live streaming this show, we're actually just recording it, and it's a great tool for doing recorded shows as well. It runs exclusively on the Apple Mac platform. It is fully optimized for Mac OS to take full advantage of the GPU as well as the CPU processing power on the Mac. You can have a number of input sources, and here you can see all the different types of video input sources that it supports, from USB, HDMI, SDI. You can just output to a live stream like YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Periscope, or a custom RTMP server. You can also record it to a disk, so if you want to later edit your show like we do here, you can do a multicam edit and have isolated recordings of each remote participant's feed. Tonight we're using mimoCall to bring Bob and Steven in here, and you can see that the video feed is fairly high quality here. I'm also doing isolated recordings of them so we can switch between them afterwards in post to full screen. Now tonight, Bob, what are you using to join?
I'm hooked up to my 12.9-inch iPad Pro using the studio mic that I always use.
Great. And how about you, Steven? How are you connecting in tonight?
So I'm on a MacBook Pro, and I'm using the Shure microphone, and the camera's GH4.
Great. So we've got an iPad guest as well as a Mac guest here tonight. What software are you using there, Steven?
Yeah, just using the Chrome browser on the Mac.
Yeah, it works in the Google Chrome browser, so you don't need any special software to be installed to join as a guest into a mimoCall, which is really great. So I encourage you to go to boinks.com to get a free trial, and it might help if you downloaded it to follow along with us tonight as we explore this tool. So let me give you a peek into how we have our show set up here. Now this screen looks super busy and super complicated, but I'm going to break that all down for you tonight and show you how we set this up. One of the easiest ways to get started with mimoLive is to use one of the pre-built templates. To see those templates, you can go to the File menu and click New. These should also appear automatically when you open mimoLive for the first time. You'll see choices like audio podcast, you have a call-in show. For something like what we're doing here, we'll choose call-in show, because this is where you want to record your video participants and have a split screen view of them. So I'll go ahead and choose call and show, and it's going to set up that document for me with all the preset inputs. So taking a look at the sources column here, we can see that it's automatically added a main camera. And if I want, I can go ahead and choose my primary camera there. I can then choose the audio device that I'm using, which is the Rodecaster Pro Stereo. And you can see immediately once I chose that, you can see audio levels here showing up and also audio levels in the program mix over here. Now for the remote callers, it's added some mimoCalls as sources. Now what you could do here is you could copy the invitation link and paste it into a text message and send it to your guest, and then they would receive that link and click it to join through a web browser, or it could open up the mimoLive Reporter app on their iPhone. And the important thing to note is that you don't want to send the same link to two different people, because you can only have one person joining using each link. You'll also want to make sure that you regenerate this link if you have future shows, so that your old guest won't accidentally jump into your meeting while you're trying to do another show. To do that, you simply click this Regenerate Code button, and it warns you that this is going to generate a new mimoCall ID, and the old one won't work anymore with this show. So go ahead and click Generate New ID, and you can see that it's created a new ID. You would then copy that link or share it with your guests so that they could join. Now let's take a look at what it's done here in the layer stack. It's automatically added a station logo. So if I take a look at what's going live here, that's that mimoLive logo in the upper right corner. If I click the live button, you'll notice that there's no more logo in the upper right. If I click live again, it comes back on. It also has a news crawl layer. This is where you could set up a RSS news feed and it would scroll news headlines across the top here in this gray bar. This split screen layer shows your guests in a side-by-side view here. Now, you'll notice that I'm currently not centered in my shot here. You actually can't see my face. And here's a cool trick that you can do. If you don't want to have to worry about telling your guests to stay in the center of their frame so that they stay perfectly framed within the split screen, you can go back to the sources here, click on FX, and then use the face tracking feature here. So what this will do, once I activate that, you see how it automatically centered the view based on where it detected the face in the video frame? That's pretty cool. Let me do that again for you so you can see what happened. I'm going to delete that face tracking filter here. You can see that it reset to the center of the shot, which is over here where I'm waving my hand. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to add back that face tracking filter. And you'll see that it will automatically pan the shot so that my face is viewable in the split screen. That's pretty cool. You can do that for your other mimoCallers simply by clicking on the FX button there, and then again activating face tracking, and you can do it for both of them. Now, one thing you'll notice is that it stretches the video near the edge here. So look at what happens to my arm there. So you don't want to get too close to the edge of the frame. You want to make sure that you stay mostly in the middle of the frame. So if your guest is at the far edge of the frame, you'll notice some weird distortion effects that happen when you move over there. So just make sure that they are mostly centered in the frame, and face tracking will take care of the rest. I'm going to turn that off just for now, and let's walk through the rest of the interface. So you can see that the split screen layer lets you control where each guest appears. So source A, that's me. I'm on the left-hand side. Source B is in the middle, and that's your mimoCaller. Source C is the other mimoCaller. Now let's say you only have one guest. Well, that's easy to fix. Just click on the layout drop-down, and you could choose 2 in a row instead of 3 in a row. And now you'll notice over here that I've only got 2 side-by-side split screens. And let's say you have more guests. Well, that's easy. You could just go to 4 in a row, or even 5 in a row. What you will have to do in this case, you'll notice that it put a placeholder with the letter D here. You'll need to go here and add another mimoCall source by adding it there. And of course, copying and sharing that link with your third guest. Down here in the layer stack, you'll also want to choose that other mimoCall that you added there as the split screen. So it's really easy to set up a remote call show and have a split screen of all your guests. You'll notice here that it also added audio layers. So again, since I added another mimoCaller there, what I'll want to do is add an audio layer. And this audio layer, I'm just going to put that at the bottom. And to set the mimoCall as the source, you simply drag and drop that on top of the layer, and you'll notice that it set it to mimoCall as the source. And then, of course, you'll also want to make it live. Now let's take a look at this area here. So this is your program output, and this is your program audio mix. Now, if you ever need to change your audio mix, you simply click this gear button here, and you can click on Audio Mix Panel. And that will open up this mix panel here where you can see all your sources, and you can adjust the volumes up and down here using these sliders. Okay, now let's see what it's added here under output destination. So the first thing it's added is a live streaming output destination. And this is where you could set up a stream to services like YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. The way you would set this up is under the preferences under accounts. So you could either click this link here, or you could go up to mimoLive and click on preferences. And here is where you would see all the different accounts here. Let's say I wanted to add a YouTube account. It would bring up the login page for YouTube. Once you've configured your streaming accounts, you can add multiple output streaming destinations here. That's the beauty of mimoLive, is that you're not limited to a single streaming service. So you can see that I could easily add another live streaming service. There's really no limit other than what your computer and your internet connection speed can handle. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that additional live streaming destination. Here's a little tip. If you just double click in the header there, that will minimize that. This is the audio monitor. Now what this is a mix minus for the host, and that's me in this case. So let's take a look at how this mix is set up. You can see that the audio mix is set to host audio monitor mix. Now if we click on the gear icon here, we can see exactly what's going on. We'll click on audio mix panel, and then you'll see that audio 3 or main camera is muted. And that's my microphone, because I don't need to hear myself in my headphone mix. I only need to hear the remote callers, which is why all the others are unmuted. Now you won't hear anything yet until you choose the correct audio device. So in this case, I'm using the Rodecaster Pro, so I need to choose that. And then for me to actually hear it, I need to click this green button to make it live. And now I'll be able to hear the audio mix of my remote callers. Now, if I wanted to record this to a local file instead of just live streaming it, what I would do is I would add another output destination and I would choose file recording. So I'll double click file recording, and then I can choose what to record in the file. In this case, I'll choose program output and the program audio mix. And you'll notice that by default, it saves it into my movies folder. And you can also customize the video and the audio codec. So in this case, it's using ProRes. You could drop it down to ProRes LT, or you could bump it up to ProRes Quad 4. You could also choose more compressed formats like H.264 and Hef-C. For audio formats, it defaults to linear PCM, but you could also choose AAC if you wanted to. In our case, we don't live stream our shows, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control-click and remove this output destination. And now I have just this file recording and my audio monitor mix. And this will basically record whatever is shown here in the program monitor. To start your show, what you would actually do is click this button that says Start Show, and it actually starts recording to this audio file. You'll notice that this control became red here, which means that it's recording and that it's live. At the end of your show, what you would do is just click Stop Show. And then you'll see that it shows you a list of the recordings, and this recording file is in the Finder, and I can view it here. Now I could do other things like add ISO recordings for each guest. I'll walk through that for one guest to show you how to do that. It's fairly straightforward, very similar to the file recording that we created for the program output. I would click over here and then add another file recording output. Now on this one, I'm going to rename it just to keep track of everything. So I'm going to call this mimoCaller A. I want to choose mimoCaller A as the source for video. And for audio, I'm going to choose mimoCaller A. So what that's going to do is it's just going to record mimoCaller's A video and audio signal. It's not going to record anything else as far as the host or other guest audio. It's going to save it in the movies folder. You could change that, and you could also configure the video and audio codecs there. So that's all you need to do to set up an ISO recording for mimoCaller A. You do the same thing for your other mimoCallers, your other camera sources. I could do an ISO recording for my main camera here as well, just by following those same steps. So as you can see, mimoLive gives you a lot of power here as far as creating remote call-in shows and remote podcast shows with these pre-built templates that make it really easy to get started right away.
So Tony, how powerful a Mac am I going to need to run this?
mimoLive doesn't have any sort of hard limit as far as the number of inputs you could have or the number of remote callers that you could have or layers. It's really driven by the processing power of the machine. But because it's written for Mac exclusively, they optimize it very heavily to use the GPU as well as the CPU. So I'm going to click this little icon here. You can also go to Window and go to Render Performance Monitor. But I'm going to click this over here, which is also kind of a processing gauge. So if I hover over that, you can see that it's render performance meter. If I click on that, so here I have the render performance monitor. And let's just talk through what each of these things mean. So my current frame rate for this project is 23.98 frames per second, and the requested rate is 23.98. So what that basically means when those numbers are the same, it means that your Mac is able to keep up and render the frame rate that you've requested. So no problem with that. The other metric down here is the actual render time and the available time. Now this is really just going to depend on your frame rate. So 23.98 frames per second, if you were to invert that and calculate how many milliseconds you have per frame, that would be 42. In order to keep up with the frame rate that you've requested for your project, in this case 23.98 frames per second, it needs to be able to complete the rendering for that frame in less than 42 milliseconds. And over here, you can see all the different layers that I currently have and how much load it's putting on the system, as well as how much time it's taking to render each layer. What I'd recommend is downloading that free trial, adding the different sources that you want in your project with all the graphics layers and everything, and open up the render performance monitor to see how much headroom you have. If the render time is very close to the available time, that means you might be pushing the limits of that Mac on what you're asking it to do as far as the number of layers and sources that you have configured.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, good question.
Right now, there's not a lot going on in some of the other layers because they're not doing anything, right? The only thing that's really processing looks to be just our videos.
That's right. Actually, your videos aren't even live. It's just the screen share that is actually live here that I'm showing.
Right, okay.
And that doesn't take a whole lot of processing time. So let me, just for illustration purposes, let me make your split screen live, and then we'll see how that jumps up. And you won't be able to see it anymore, but I will be able to tell you what it jumps up to. Now that you guys are in split screen, I can see that my actual render time has jumped up 7 or 8 milliseconds. Before, remember, it was 4 milliseconds. Now it's maybe about double that, but still I have 42 milliseconds available. So it's only using a fraction of the available time to render it.
What Mac are you running, just out of curiosity?
So today we're running on a 2013 Mac Pro. That's the black cylinder version of that. It has 12 cores of CPU processor and also the top-end dual GPUs.
That's what's doing most of the work. It's the GPUs, right?
That's correct. It's going to use the GPUs as much as possible. From this system, at least, you can see that it's only using a fraction of the available processing resources. So let's talk through how I have our current show set up here. Let's start with the sources. You can see that I have my main camera here, which is the view that you're looking at that's showing the TV and this whole set here. That's coming in through a Blackmagic Ultra Studio Mini recorder. That's an SDI input that's running from my camera. Also, we're using the Rodecaster Pro stereo input into the Mac Pro as the audio source. Next down is our overhead camera. Right now there's nothing in view, but you can see that if I put my hand or the cup there, we've got an overhead camera that I can then bring into a split screen view here with Bob and Steven. And the next thing down is Bob here with his mimoCall. And below that, you can see Steven's mimoCall. And I've got a couple more sources beyond that. So I also have a Safari window, which is that mimoboinks.com website that we were looking at before. So that's how I brought that into a split screen view. And then I have a screen capture, which is how I'm showing this entire screen right now. Okay, so there's a lot of different options here.
It's pretty powerful, and it's really nice that it's in a single solution.
The software is amazing, Tony. It sounds like we're going to have some additional training on how to produce television shows.
Yeah, it is very powerful. It looks very complicated, but if you go with some of the preset templates that they have, I think you can get up and running very, very quickly because they've created some very popular templates like that audio podcast that I pointed out, as well as that video call-in show.
The way the user interface to me works is very logical. It's drag and drop. You put in the things you want to do. It's just understanding the lingo, and you could be up and running real fast.
Yeah, I think for those of us out there who have some experience with production switchers like Blackmagic, where you have a program and a preview bus, this may seem very foreign, right? Because there is no concept of sort of this preview bus or anything like that. You set up layer sets, and then you can set up shortcuts. You can have remote controls through a web browser or even an iPhone or an iPad. There's many, many, many different things that you can do with this software. Very, very powerful. There's a lot of things that you could do with this, and I think we're going to be switching our show over to using mimoLive from now on.
It's really impressive, actually.
Well, that was just a high-level overview of mimoLive, and we like it a lot. It can make our shows a lot easier. So check out mimoLive. Go to boinks.com. We'll put a link in the description. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, ring that bell, and give us a like if you enjoyed the show and you want to see more like it. Take care, and we'll see you next time on The 3 Techs. Okay.
Good night, all.
Jeez.
Let me stop that. That was